Imagine if everything you thought was real was actually just a part of a big, secret plan. For Prince Harry, it only took 3 short weeks for his whole life to feel like it was falling apart. This is not a happy story about a prince and a princess. It is not a story that ends with everyone smiling. It is a story about a man who was very lonely. He just wanted to find one person to love him for who he really was. He did not want someone to love him because he was a famous prince or because he lived in a big, fancy palace. He just wanted to be seen as a normal human being with real feelings. Instead, he found out that the woman he married had a secret past that he was never supposed to know about. This secret was hidden behind many layers of lies and very powerful friends who helped keep things quiet. This created a huge wall between him and the rest of the Windsors. There was a very strange story about Prince Harry having an emergency with a duck at Oprah Winfrey's house. It sounds so weird that you have to hear it to believe it. People asked Oprah how she really felt about Meghan and how the world was looking at her. This goes back to all those rumors that people have been talking about for a long time. Oprah was very calm, but she was not afraid to be very honest and frank. She started to think about what would happen if she admitted her big interview was a mistake. This interview made news all over the world, but it also caused a lot of hurt feelings for the king and the rest of the family. The tension between the Windsors grew even stronger because of the things said in that garden. What if the most powerful woman on TV privately said that the big interview was the biggest mistake of her whole life? She did not say this on a stage or in a news report. She said it behind closed doors where it was quiet and serious. She said one heavy sentence about Meghan Markle: "I should have never trusted her." That is where this new story starts. The way it ends is something that nobody saw coming. What you are about to hear goes much deeper than anything you saw on the news or in the papers. It is about a broken trust that changed everything for the royal family and their friends in Hollywood. Oprah Winfrey is the most powerful woman in the media. She is famous for being able to read people like they are open books. She can usually tell when someone is telling the truth or just acting. But for nearly 3 years after that famous interview, she went completely silent. She did not say anything on the red carpet. She did not mention Meghan in other talks. She did not even let anything slip when she was just chatting. There was only silence. Sitting down with Oprah was supposed to be a way to talk about the problems with the Windsors, but instead, it created a huge distance that kept growing. For someone as loud and famous as Oprah, this kind of silence meant everything. Now, here is the thing about that interview. Oprah did not just give Meghan Markle a microphone and then walk away. She gave her everything she could. She let her use her beautiful garden in Montecito. She gave her a giant stage that the whole world could see. She did not argue with her or ask mean questions. She did not make things uncomfortable. Meghan cried and made some very serious claims against the royal family. She changed her whole story in front of millions of people. Oprah let every single second of it happen without stopping her. She created a space where there were no limits. People called it a historic moment that changed the world, but the Windsors in England were watching with very sad hearts. At the time, Oprah was right in the center of the story. She looked calm and very professional, but behind that calm face, cracks were already starting to form. Some people who work on the inside noticed it almost right away. Even back then, people were whispering that something felt a little bit off to Oprah. They felt that not everything was adding up the way it looked on the TV screen. For a long time, none of these feelings were told to the public. Oprah stayed quiet and the world kept moving. But now, we are finally getting a clearer picture of why that distance was made in the first place. The early cracks in their friendship did not hold. They blew wide open. Someone whose whole career was built on having real talks and human connections admitted she made a giant error. It was the biggest mistake of her broadcasting life. It did not come out on a stage or in a formal paper. It was not even a hint for people to guess about. It slipped out behind closed doors in one quiet, heavy sentence. She said she should have never trusted Meghan. Once those words started to move through the right circles of friends, they did not stay quiet for long. What followed was a full Hollywood reckoning. This is a time when people have to face the truth. It was a slow and quiet change that hit in ways that are almost impossible to recover from. The problems did not show up in the tabloid papers at first. They showed up in emails that were never answered. They showed up in meetings that were canceled for no reason. Suddenly, rooms felt a lot colder than they used to for Meghan and Harry. The details behind all of this are something else entirely. It was a massive snub from the people they thought were their friends. Remember, Gayle King was the one Meghan was always calling to give information to. But this story is not just about one interview that did not look good over time. It is about what happened before the cameras even started to roll. It is about what happened the second the lights went off and Oprah discovered the truth piece by piece. Oprah allegedly found out things in the weeks and months after the show that turned her disappointment into something much more personal. It felt like a straight-up betrayal of their friendship. We are going to break down all of it. By the time we get to the end, there is a very good chance you will look at that interview and the Windsors in a completely different way. Here is the part that many people missed at the time. When the interview was on TV, the reaction was fast and giant. Social media exploded. Everyone had an opinion. Some people liked the couple and some people were very critical. But right in the middle was Oprah, the woman who made it all happen. Kate Middleton and the rest of the Windsors felt very let down when the interview came out. After the show, Oprah just went quiet, not for a week or a month, but for close to 3 years. She said absolutely nothing publicly about Meghan Markle. No comments when journalists tried to get an answer. No casual mentions in any of her other talks. It was complete radio silence. When you understand what Oprah had actually given Meghan, that quiet starts to feel like a very specific kind of message. Oprah had opened her own home and her own heart to them, and then she felt like she had been used. Oprah Winfrey built her whole name on being real. She spent decades making sure people knew her for authentic conversations. These are talks that cut through the fake images that celebrities use. That was always the point of what she did. You sat down with Oprah and you were expected to be your real self. That was the unspoken agreement that made her show so famous. So for her to walk away and privately call the interview a PR exercise is a very big deal. It means she felt like she was being used to help someone's image rather than telling a true story. It made the fight between the Windsors even more complicated for her. For Oprah, this was not just someone being a little bit disappointed. It was someone feeling like the foundation of everything she stood for had been used against her. And here's what makes it even more interesting. That feeling did not go away once the show was over. If anything, it got harder and stronger. While the rest of the world was celebrating this big cultural moment, Oprah was sitting with a bad feeling. She felt that what she put her name on was not what she thought it was going to be. It was not just a vague feeling that something was wrong. It was more specific than that. There was a particular moment that most people completely missed. This moment reportedly started to make Oprah's doubts very real. It had nothing to do with the big accusations or the crying that everyone talked about. It actually had to do with a chicken coop. Seriously, out of everything in that interview, the thing that shook Oprah's confidence was a little house for chickens. To the average viewer watching at home, it looked like a charming and simple detail. It showed Archie's chickens in a rustic little coop with a sign that had fresh paint. It looked like a glimpse into a quiet, simple life away from the palace and the Windsors. But Oprah knew far more about how that interview was set up than the audience did. To her, it felt like something else entirely. An editor said that Oprah watched the final cut of the interview 2 days before it was on TV. The first time she sat through it, she was completely silent. She did not say a word. The second time, her concerns started to show. At one point, she turned to a producer and said quietly, "This won't age well." She was not talking about the big moments. She was talking about the setup and the carefully made scene. She felt like she was watching a stage, not a real life. Why was a chicken coop such a big deal? Here is why. Oprah later found out that the entire setup had been built just 1 week before they started filming. The fence was freshly done and the coop was repainted. The sign even looked brand new. The warmth of that scene completely disappeared for her. What looked like a real snapshot of their everyday life was actually put together just for the interview. Once she knew that, she could not unsee it. She allegedly told someone close to her, "They don't want honesty, they want control." This realization changed how she saw the entire royal fight. Once you start to suspect that someone is being fake, you cannot just turn that feeling off. But the chicken coop was only the beginning. After the filming was done, something else happened. As the crew was packing up the cameras and the lights, Meghan allegedly went to a staff member in private. She did not go there to say thank you. She had a specific request. She wanted to make sure she got a look at the final video before it was shown to the world. She said, "Oprah will understand." This was a big rule that was being pushed against. The staff member was caught off guard and passed that message straight to the boss. When Oprah heard it, her response was fast and very firm. She said, "Absolutely not." In Oprah's world, that kind of request simply does not happen. No guest in the history of her show had ever asked for a say in how the final video was shaped. That boundary had never even needed to be said out loud before because nobody had ever tried to cross it until now. It showed that the interview from Meghan's side was never about being open. It was about controlling the story told to the world. Later that same evening, someone else followed up on Meghan's behalf. This time, the request was a little different. They wanted the final video to match exactly the story Meghan wanted to tell. For someone like Oprah, who built everything on real conversations, this felt like a slap in the face. It was a signal that the whole thing was planned to look a certain way. From that point on, Oprah's confidence in what had happened started moving away. She began to pull back quietly and deliberately without making a public scene. The people around her noticed the shift immediately. What Oprah did not know yet was that the request for control was only the first piece of the puzzle. Over the next few days, more information came to her from different directions. Each new piece made the picture harder to ignore. This is where things started getting really personal. While Oprah was sitting with everything she had seen during filming, she got a text from one of her best friends, Gayle King. The message was short and a little mysterious. It said, "You weren't the only one, just wait." The Oprah thought Gayle was talking about other bosses, but she was talking about something else. Gayle followed up and explained what she meant. Meghan had pitched Gayle the exact same idea, almost word for word. It was a plan for a documentary following Meghan through her life as a mom and her charity work. The kind of project that tells the world exactly who you want them to think you are. Here is the part that hit Oprah the hardest. That idea had been brought to Oprah first. It felt like she wasn't helping a friend tell a story. It felt like she was just one stop on a big media plan to build a brand. This made the distance between the couple and the Windsors feel even wider to her. That shift from feeling like a helper to feeling like a tool changed something for Oprah. It went beyond just being professional, it felt personal. Then something happened that nobody outside of a small circle knew. A person who helps with clothes came forward with details that were very unsettling. This person did not want attention or a book deal. They just wanted to tell the truth. They said that once the filming was over, the warmth that was there on camera was gone. The way Meghan talked about the interview afterward was like someone reviewing a business move that went exactly as planned. Meghan reportedly said that Oprah gives her credibility and she gives Oprah the story. She said that was the trade. But the detail that allegedly hurt Oprah the most was about the emotions. The helper claimed Meghan laughed about how easy it was to shape the feelings during the filming. She said all she had to do was pause and look sad, and Oprah would fill the space for her. For someone who spent decades creating a space for people to be truly honest, hearing that the tears were calculated was something she could not shake. It made the whole royal drama feel like a play. It turned out the warning signs had been there even before the filming started. About 3 weeks before the cameras rolled, Oprah got a private message from someone inside Prince Harry's close group of friends. The message was short but very serious. It said, "Please be careful. Meghan's version of what happened is not the whole picture. You deserve to know that before you film." At the time, Oprah ignored it. She thought she was ready. But looking back, she reportedly admitted to her team that she should have asked more questions. She felt like she enabled something that was not right. At this point, Oprah had heard enough from enough people that she could not ignore the truth anymore. The fake chicken house, the request to see the video, and the message from Harry's friend all added up. Together, they told a story she did not want to be a part of. But there was one more thing that finally pushed her from being disappointed to making a big decision. She heard that Meghan's team was already looking for the next big interview and the next big headline to keep the story moving forward. The pitch for the next big project included a line that really upset Oprah. It suggested that what the interview with Oprah had provided simply was not enough. It said that Oprah was not enough. Think about that for a second. This is the woman who opened her own home and handed over her big name to help them. She had created the most comfortable place for them to talk. Now she was being described as not enough in their big strategy meetings. This was the moment Oprah made a clear and final decision to step back. According to people who were there, Oprah did not fade away slowly. She picked up the phone and called her longtime boss. Her voice was calm and composed, but what she said was very clear. She said, "I want it on the record. No more Meghan, no more Harry, we're done." When the boss asked why, Oprah's response was simple and direct. She said she had a million thoughts on the interview, but the main thing was that she opened her platform in good faith. She said what they brought was a performance, not the truth. There was no public statement after that. There was no interview where she talked about it. There were no social media posts. It was just a decision made in private and then acted on without waiting. From that point on, everything shifted. It was not just Oprah personally, the whole industry started to see things differently. In Hollywood, decisions like this do not stay secret. They move quietly through meetings and talks that never make the news. When Oprah steps back from someone, everyone else notices and factors it in. The fallout that followed was quiet but very hard to recover from. By the time Meghan began to feel the weight of it, the doors had already started closing. There is one more small piece to this story that almost got lost. It goes back to something Meghan said during the interview about her first outing with the Queen. She described a warm detail where the Queen noticed she might be cold and put a blanket over her knees. It was a sweet story that made it look like they were very close. However, someone with a sharp eye noticed something different when they looked at the actual video from that day. Not the interview, but the real footage of the car. The video appears to show the Queen placing the blanket across her own lap, not Meghan's. Now, is this proof? Maybe not. The video is not perfectly clear, but it is one more detail that does not quite match the story Meghan told. In isolation, it might be a small mistake, but after the chicken house and everything else, it starts to look like a pattern of small lies. That is what makes it stick. It is not about one blanket, it is about many small things that start to add up. Each one on its own can be explained away, but when you line them all up, the picture becomes very hard to ignore. This is what sharp-eyed viewers brought back into the conversation. They were not making a big claim, but they were asking a bigger question that people were not ready to stop thinking about. Given everything else in this story, it is easy to understand why trust was broken between the couple and the Windsors. For Meghan Markle, the ending was not loud. There was no dramatic public fight. What happened was much quieter. The invitations to big parties stopped showing up. Public relations firms that wanted to work with her suddenly became hard to reach. Producers who wanted to work with her started finding reasons to cancel meetings. Streaming platforms put everything on hold. Nobody made a big announcement, but things were just gone. One person at a big company said, "If Oprah is out, then we are out too." The moment that reportedly hit the hardest was at a big Hollywood charity party. Meghan arrived expecting the usual warmth from her famous friends, but instead, three very famous actresses turned away when she walked toward them. One of them reportedly told her helper, "Tell her I am not available for photos tonight." And then there was the empty chair. At Meghan's table, a seat had been saved for a famous star named Viola Davis, but Viola never showed up. She had asked to be moved because she did not want to sit there. Meghan understood exactly what that empty chair meant. In the weeks that followed, she tried to get things back on track. She sent messages through publicists and even said nice things about Oprah in public. She was trying to reopen the door, but the responses were cold or they did not come at all. Eventually, a final message was sent through a friend. It was short and direct. It said, "Trust once broken does not get any more airtime." That sentence hurt more than any mean story in the newspaper. Meghan had handled mean news before, but this was different. This was not something she could argue with or push back against. There was nothing concrete to fight, just closed doors and unanswered texts. Hollywood had simply decided to move on without her. She had underestimated how quickly people change their minds when they feel like they have been tricked. Hollywood will embrace people who change, but it does not like uncertainty. Once powerful people think you are being too strategic with your stories, everything changes. The momentum changed, and changing it back is almost impossible because there is no single moment you can point to and fix. Oprah never needed to say a word out loud. In her world, people pay very close attention to who she supports, but they pay even more attention to who she steps away from. Once she walked away, the whole industry followed her. One broken connection shut doors that once seemed like they would never close. The fight between the couple and the Windsors had finally cost them their place in Hollywood. If this story was different than you expected, please leave a comment below. If you want to see more, you can follow the channel and hit the bell for news. It genuinely helps more people find these stories. Thank you for listening to this deep look into what happened behind the scenes with Oprah and the royal family. It is a story about how important trust is, even for the most famous people in the whole wide world. The silence from the palace continues, but the world is still talking about what happened in that garden. Whether you believe the couple or the Windsors, one thing is for sure: things will never be the same again. The big media machine is moving on, and the couple is left trying to figure out what their next move will be in a world that has turned a little bit colder. We will be here to tell you what happens next in this long and complicated story.